All right, tonight on Death Toll Racing, we're actually making some progress here on this 4x4 safari wagon that we're building. I'm going to finish off that cross member and get it back in there and everything. And I got a cool trick on some bolt hole clearances that I wanted to show you. So I don't go into detail on welding it, but I do show you my little trick on clearancing it. I made a mistake when I laid out the holes. I got way too close to some of the holes with the tubes, so I'm going to have to make it look like I did it on purpose. So I'm going to show you how I did that. We're going to take that 14 bolt rear end all the way apart, just strip it down to an empty housing. We're going to cut off all the brackets and all that junk on it and just get it nice and clean so that it's ready to go. We're going to weld around the axle tubes into the cast iron so that we keep that thing from twisting, potentially twisting. If you guys have never seen that, Google it. That's kind of a fun thing to do. Watching those Jeep Rubicons do it a lot. They'll twist that housing on the axle tubes, and anyway, it's fun to watch guys fix it because they get pretty creative about how they fix it. It's not that the Jeeps are weak. It's just that they get wheeled hard, and that it just happens. Anyway, so we're going to put the rear end up in the car. We're going to get it centered. We're going to get it centered in the arch of the rear wheel well. We're going to have it up pretty much at its compressed state when we find all our angles and stuff. It's the easiest way to find them just because, it's straighter. Everything's straighter, so it's easier to find the angles. So that's what we're going to do there. We're going to find all those angles. We're going to get all those parts coming so that we can build those on episode 5. Episode 5 will actually get that rear end. It'll actually be in with control arms on and everything. That's going to be pretty fun. I'm excited about that because that's just real big forward step on it. We ran into issues like we were expecting, wheel and tire clearance issues on the back. I think I have a plan, so stay tuned for that. That's kind of cool. I'm actually really excited about that. That ended up being kind of cool. So I'm going a little bit of a different direction than we originally talked about. Bob wants to remind me to feed him. He likes to be fed. He eats a lot. And I think he'd be about 500 pounds if I'd let him. Find us on Instagram. It's at Death Toll Racing. I try to post pictures of progress and stuff as I'm going. Just a little quick picture. Follow us on it, I guess, or however you do that. I'm not a social media guy, so I don't know. We got a finger brake. So that's kind of cool. 4-foot finger brake, 12 gauge. It says it does. It's not the best one in the world, but it's pretty nice. It's pretty heavy too. I got some modifications I'm going to do to it, make it a little better. I already put it on wheels so we can roll it around. Anyway, it worked out good. I had a little job that paid for part of it, and hopefully we'll get more jobs like that pay for it. It's kind of fun to do. It's easy. It's not neck breaking work bending sheet metal around. Then we just made these little brackets for a friend. They turned out real good. I think they're happy with them. I hope they are. Anyway. So stay tuned. And today's going to be fun. We got lots of cool stuff happening, and we're starting to make progress on this. And you can actually start seeing some developments on how we're going to make this thing happen. I'm going to show you a little trick here. One of my bolts ended up a little too close to the tube. Actually, a couple of them did, but I'll show you how I clearance them here on this one. So I took a bolt and I drilled a 1/4-inch hole right down the middle of it. I didn't go all the way through, but I went down quite a ways, ½ inch or so, 3/4 of an inch. So then I just put that in the hole, and then you could take a hole saw, and the pilot drill on the hole saw is 1/4 inch. So you just pick a hole saw that's the right diameter to give you the clearance that you want and accounting for the weld and everything. And then just drill it. It goes pretty easy. You don't push any pressure on it. You just got to kind of let the hole saw do it. Otherwise you start breaking teeth off of it. And then there you have it. You weld around that and you clean it up. It looks real nice. All right, here I'm going to take the rear end apart. Here I'm just going to disassemble it and make it real light so that we can work with it. Plus we're not going to be cooking the gear oil and everything when we're welding on it. So I'm just going to battle away at this thing, and that passenger side drum just wouldn't come off, and ended up just kind of beating it off of there. The adjuster was so stuck I couldn't get it to loosen up. So I just finally had to go brute force. I thought I might have to cut the drum in half, split the drum, but I was able to finally get it off of there. Anyway, so I got that thing all apart and oil drained out of it. Here I'm cutting all the brackets off of this rear end, everything except for the old spring perches. I'm going to leave the spring perches because they just happen to line up perfectly with the frame. And right on that frame there, we can put our hydraulic bump stops. So I'm just going to leave them there, and we're going to end up putting a plate on them and capping them a little later. So anyway, a good trick on getting all this stuff off. Luckily in the 80s and stuff, and probably still currently, they run this thing, their welders, about as wrong as you can, really. The welds on these things look terrible, and they actually are terrible. All you got to do is just cut the top off of, like, on the shock tower, how it's one plate bent around and it's welded on there twice. Just cut it so they're two separate pieces, and then just hit the plates towards the weld. They only welded them on one side, so just hit it towards the weld, and they just pop right off of there, and then just grind the weld, what's left of the weld, right off of there, and it works. It works great. It's easy. It's fast. This video was 9 minutes, so it took me 9 minutes to strip all the brackets off that rear end, and there wasn't a lot on there, but it still goes really quick, and that was clean up and everything. So not bad. I put foil over all the openings. That's a great idea. The sparks, if you kind of double it up and stuff, sparks even from welding and stuff don't really go through it unless you're right next to it. But yeah, foil's great when it comes to this type of stuff. I use it a lot. Anyway, so I'll carry on and do that, and we'll weld on some plates here next. Here we're welding plates on the spring perches, the old leaf spring perches on this rear end. They are exactly underneath the frame, right where we would be mounting a bump stop anyway. So it just works out perfectly widthwise. So I'm gonna leave them there, and I'm just gonna weld the plate on so they have a nice smooth top for the bump stop to hit. You got to use pretty heavy plate. I mean, if you're gonna hit those bump stops pretty hard, if you're gonna kind of desert this car around, high speed stuff, and it's amazing how hard the rear end will actually hit those bump stops. So you got to use a little bit heavy plate. Probably 1/4 inch probably would have been sufficient. I used 3/8 because we bought those flat bars for earlier projects. So I just cut some flat bars there and just welded them on. All right, there they are, all welded. They turned out pretty good. Those leaf spring perches, I don't think they're cast iron. I think they're like a cast steel, so they actually weld pretty good. I was kind of expecting it to be more of a cast iron, so I was expecting it to be pretty terrible. But it worked out pretty good. They welded on there really nicely. And then here I'm going to show you here in just a second, if I ever get there, in the arch of the frame there, we're going to put that hydraulic bump stop I keep talking about. We're going to put that right on the frame right here where I'm pointing, and we'll just box that in there a little bit, and we'll make a mount for it to go right there, and they'll hit those plates that we just welded on. All right, kind of funny. While this thing was upside down, I couldn't figure out why there was oil pouring out of the middle of the tube. I thought it was tracing or something, but it turns out it was just that little hole. And that little hole is from where they started to weld, but they weren't in the right spot, so they stopped. And they use a flux core wire. They did use a flux core wire back then. They probably still do now, but anyway, they have it set up real weird. I mean, they have a ton of wire. I can't believe they penetrated all the way through that tube just with that little spot weld. But they must have the thing cranked, the wire speed cranked, the amperage cranked way up. But anyway, to kind of prove that theory is, man, that material is hard. Right there, I couldn't drill into it. I mean, it was really hard. You could have heated it up and annealed it. I tried to drill the tube there just to see if the whole tube was that hard, but it's not. It's just where they welded there like that. But anyway, that hard welds like that really aren't a good thing. If you were to actually flex this thing till it broke, that hard weld there would have been a stress riser, and it would have actually probably started breaking right at that weld. It's amazing, like what little things like that can do. Not that it would ever actually happen, but anyway, it is a weak spot. So I just went ahead, and since it's a hole, and granted it's on the top and it probably wouldn't leak, but I'm just going to weld it up anyway, just so it's right, and I'll just grind it off, and no one will ever know any different. All right, I'm going to weld the axle housing to the axle tubes now. And the reason you do that is so that it prevents the axle housing from twisting on the tubes. If you're in like 4 low, say in rocks, and you kind of got wheel hop or something, it tends to want to twist the housing on the tubes, because the tubes are held by your suspension. So it twists the housing up, and your pinion ends up being pointed up at some goofy angle. If you haven't seen that happen, YouTube search Jeep Rubicons. They do that a lot, and it's not that the Jeeps are weaker than anything. It's just that they wheel them hard, and it just happens. But there's some pretty creative videos on how guys will fix that, and how they can get away with fixing it. While the rear end is still in the Jeep, they'll twist them back. But anyway, so what I do is I heat up the the differential housing hotter, the cast iron part hotter than the axle tube. And my idea on that is so that when it cools off, my weld will be in compression, because it's shrinking around the tube, instead of tension, where if the axle was actually shrinking more than the iron, it would put it in tension. I've never had one break, and I've kind of done it both ways. I don't know if it's too much of a concern. It is pressed in there, so I don't think the expansion thing is too much of a deal. But I like doing it that way anyway, just for the peace of mind. And I'll do it in 3 passes. I'll do them all a continuous pass all the way around. I'll just rotate the housing as I'm welding. You don't have to do it that way. If you're not confident in doing it that way, then don't just do a section, roll it, do a section, roll it. That's totally fine. So anyway, I'm going to do 3 passes, and that'll stack it up about to the top of the cast iron. And also, while I was in there doing the welding, I also went through the factory plug welds. That's how they hold the axles in, or keep it from rotating from the factories. They just have some holes in the cast iron and weld them in. So I just went ahead and touched those up, because usually they miss on those. They kind of look full until you start heating it up and the flux starts falling out of it, and then they kind of had missed. So I just touched those up too at the same time, because oil does actually kind of seep out of those. All right, I got the truss notched out, and I got plates in there, and I'm going to weld them up. So I'm just kind of making sure they're flat, and we'll have to watch that as we go and weld on it, because it is going to pull around as we heat it up like that, and just that shape of it's not going to be super rigid in that direction. So I'm just going to weld that up, keep it flat and straight, and then we'll move on to putting it on the axle. All right, I got the truss on there and centered up. Everything looks real good. It clears real good. We can paint in there. I don't like it making it too close, because then you can't get paint in there. I made the top of it level with the top of the spring perches, so that kind of puts, if we were to run it all level, it'll put it kind of at the factory pinion angle, and we can adjust it from there. All right, so we're ready to pick the rear end up, so we can kind of get some ideas on 4-link angles. I need to get the angles so that I can design the plates. I'll probably design some of the plates so they're universal, so it'll just be kind of a trim to fit thing. But if I can actually nail the angle now, that'd be even easier for us later. So I went ahead and I drilled and tapped the frame, and I hung these hooks in. They're a little bit back of the center of the arch, and that's so that it's more in the center of the wheel well. For some reason, the wheel well, even if I were to trim the front, which we're probably going to have to do, because this opening here is only like 34 inches. So I'll trim this, and that'll center it kind of closer to here. But even then, with the rear end all the way compressed, it's going to be as far back as it ever will be, and it'll only be going forward as the suspension goes down. So I'm going to err on the side of too long and have the rear end back. We can always move it with adjusting the link, so we can always move it forward and backward. But I think this is going to be closer to where we're actually going to ride it. So I went ahead and I just used this hole as a reference on both sides. Measured a 1/2 inch down and then 1.5 inches down for these 2 holes. And we got that right where we want it on both sides. And so I'm going to hang the rear end. Let's see here. I'm going to hang the rear end right on the outside of our bump stops. These are where the hydraulic mounts, the hydraulic bump stops are going to go. they're going to hit here and they're going to mount right into the middle of that arch. So, but it gives us a pretty good platform on where they can hit. So anyway, we're gonna hang it by a chain, just basket it from here up to that hook that we welded on the frame, and then the rear end will be pretty much hanging centered and lengthwise about where we want it. So I mean within adjustable range, but that way it gets some angles and stuff. And so I'm just going to lower the car down, put some chains on it, and then lift the car back up, and the rear end will be hanging where we want it. Alright, there we have it. It's hanging. It's not very heavy, so this chain seems kind of light, and it is pretty light. It wasn't really my first choice, but it's what I had, so it'll work. I don't think it'll kill us, but you never know, it might. Okay, so we got the rear end hanging in the car. It's hanging centered, and it's hanging forward and back, good enough for what we're doing here. What we're going to do now is we're just going to find the angles of our control arm mounts. The lowers are going to come right underneath our leaf spring perch that we turned into our hydraulic spring, or hydraulic bump stop perch. So we're going to have those come in right there, and then they're going to start here's center of the car, and then I have a scribe mark just offset on either side of it. That'll be the center of the joint, the lower control arms for there. So all we need is that angle there, which I already measured, and that's the 20 degrees, and I just did that using a simple angle finder, and I just eyeball it and sight it like you would a gun, and you can be pretty accurate. You'll be within 1/10 of a degree or so, but that ends up being, I kind of offset these so that it would be a nice even 20 degrees on the lowers. And then the uppers, we're just going to take those off. We're going to mount them here, and we're actually going to follow this, which is 30 degrees. This frame tapers in 30 degrees, and that'll be right here is where we'll put our control arm mount, and then it'll mount up right in here for that side, and right in here for this side. That's not center. That's over the ring gear, not center on the cross member or on the axle. And we'll have to notch this floor a little bit, and we'll make a nice cover on the inside. We'll weld in a cover for it. That'll look nice. That's under the seat in the back, so that won't be too bad. And that should be about it. We're probably gonna have to clearance that cross member too, but that's just a light duty cross member. We might just cut it all the way out and put something a little heavier in there. But we have to remember that we're gonna have the coilovers are going to be mounting right in here. I want them as far as the outside as we can. And then that's going to be about where they are, and we'll go as straight up as we can. They're going to have to taper in a little bit, but it should be good. It's basically going right through where the factory coil spring was, so it's kind of cool how that worked. So that should be it for that. So I got 30 degrees coming off of here, 20 degrees coming off of here. I ran it all through a calculator. Online to figure out our anti-squat, and our anti-squat's going to be right at 31%, which is that's kind of how you'd set up like a desert race truck. So as you accelerate, it's going to kind of absorb the bumps, but it is going to suck the rear end kind of up in the car under acceleration. So it'll kind of squat back a lot when we go, which is cool. That's kind of fun to drive them when they're that way. Anyway, it's not a good thing for a rock crawler. Rock crawlers, you don't really want to do it that way, but for like a desert racer and stuff, you would. So anyway, 31% is our number on that, which is kind of cool. That's kind of what I was going for. The only way you can really adjust that is basically by making your truss taller or shorter. We'll change that a lot. That's just where your control arms tie in. It's kind of another complicated thing, but there's really good calculators online for that people have just donated a ton of their time to share that knowledge and stuff with everyone. So anyway, you research that. There's a lot of information on that, so you're not going in totally blind. You really don't need to overthink it too much, because there's so many numbers that it starts to freak you out a little bit. Anyway, we're using a 2-inch quarter wall DOM tubing on our control arms, upper and lower, so they're plenty stout for this car and what we're going to do with this car. I mean, I don't really plan on desert racing the car, but we'll build it so that we can do whatever we want with it. All right, I got the axle up in the car, and you can't help but start looking at what your wheel and tire options are. The axle's up about as high as it'll go, it's centered and everything, and so you kind of start looking at it like, oh man, what can I run? So I can tell you one thing we can't run, and that's those turbine wheels that I wanted to run. They're not going to work. So then I have to go back to an old favorite, and that's the wheels that I put on the Ram 30, the Death Toll Ram. It's a 2018 Ram. They're the Black Rhino Arsenals. I think that's what I'm going to run on this, and again, I hate to choose the same wheel for everything, but I really like them. But they make it in a sand center with a black outer, and I normally am not a sand color guy, but on this car, it's going to be really, really cool once it's all wrapped, and we're doing that safari theme and stuff with, I think later on we're going to build a roof rack and everything for this thing, just totally make it a safari rig. So anyway, I think those wheels will look really, really cool on it. And the plus part is they make them in a modern offset in this bolt pattern. So I think we're going to be able to retain the factory fender. We'll have to roll the lip, stretch it out just a little bit, whack it off right there, and I think we're going to be good. But we'll see. We may have to run a fender flare, or make one. We'll do if we have to, we have to, and that's not the end of the world. And the front is also going to determine whether we have to do fender flares or not. Even if I can make this work without a fender flare, but we can't make the front work without a fender flare, and we have to build one. Obviously, it's going to get one front and rear. So we will see when that time comes. I got everything ordered for the links, so we'll have those not by next episode, but the following one, which is episode, what is that, 5? So we'll have all that stuff. I ordered I made some cool little gussets and stuff for the truss, and that'll make that look a little more finished off. It's plenty strong the way it is, but it'll make it look good. I don't like big gaudy trusses. I don't know why everyone's doing that nowadays, but whatever. It is what it is. Anyway, so that's that. Thanks for watching this week, and we will see you next week. I think we're going to build the transfer case in it and put that slip yoke eliminator and stuff in.
Hey Bob, want a churro? You want to weld me? Yeah, I can go for that. That tastes pretty good. No, get back here. Hey, you're making me go cross-eyed. That's good stuff. No, yeah, I'm not done with that. Give me it. Hey, what happened to it? I want more. Give me more. Yeah, I want more. I want more. I'll eat a wrapper. I don't care. I'm starving. Give me it. No. Owie. No. Hey, stay here. No. I want some more. Give me some more. No. Give me it. Don't you dare. Give me it. No. Give me it. No.